The entire restaurant stopped breathing. Nearly 50 of the wealthiest people in the city froze in place, forks suspended midair, crystal glasses hovering inches from polished lips. Conversations died instantly. In the middle of the dining room, a 4-year-old boy was screaming so hard his face was turning a frightening shade of blue. His small body shook with each breathless cry. Standing helplessly over him was Marcus Hale, a man worth more than $6 billion, staring down at his own child like he'd just encountered something money couldn't fix. The manager was already signaling for security. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering sharp judgments about discipline and entitlement. No one noticed the young waitress slipping past the guards until she was already kneeling on the marble floor. She didn't acknowledge the billionaire. She didn't raise her voice. She leaned in close and whispered 5 quiet words. And in that instant, everything changed. She had no idea that this single moment would rip open a truth that had been buried for 4 long years. A truth powerful enough to put her life in danger. The Onyx Room wasn't just a restaurant, it was a statement. It was the kind of place where bottled water cost more than Alara Burks earned in an hour. Velvet drapes absorbed sound, crystal chandeliers cast warm, calculated light, and silverware was so heavy it felt ceremonial in your hands. Every movement was deliberate. Every mistake was unforgivable. For Alara, the place felt like a trap. At 25, exhaustion clung to her bones. Not the kind you slept off, the kind that came from juggling double shifts, unpaid bills, and the constant fear that one wrong step could erase your income overnight. Her feet burned inside worn, non-slip shoes as she smoothed her apron and checked her reflection in the brass panel near the service station. Her dark hair was pulled back so tightly it tugged at her scalp. Her uniform was flawless. It had to be. At Onyx Room, mistakes didn't earn warnings. They earned termination. Table 4 needs a refill. Move, snapped Gerald, the floor supervisor. Gerald was short, sharp-eyed, and perpetually irritated. His thin mustache twitched when he spoke, which was always. "Yes, sir," Alara murmured, reaching for the decanter. The mood shifted at exactly 7:20 p.m. The heavy oak doors swung open, and it felt like the air itself was pulled from the room. 2 broad-shouldered men in tailored suits entered first, scanning the dining area with trained suspicion. Then he stepped inside. Marcus Hale. The name alone carried weight. Tech empire founder. Property magnate. And, more recently, the city's most infamous widower. He was taller than magazine photos suggested, his charcoal suit perfectly fitted, his posture rigid. His face was striking, sculpted, confident, but something was wrong. Tonight, Marcus Hale didn't look powerful. He looked unraveling. Clinging to his hand was a small boy, maybe 4 years old, dressed in a tiny suit that pinched at the collar. The child dragged his feet, cheeks flushed, breath coming in sharp, uneven pulls. "Please, Noah," Marcus whispered, his voice strained. "Just sit down. Just for a little while." They were guided to the central table, the best seat in the house. Everyone could see them. Everyone was watching. Alara paused near the kitchen entrance, tray balanced on her palm. Her chest tightened as she watched the boy. This wasn't misbehavior. This was fear. Noah's eyes darted everywhere, the glittering lights, the low roar of overlapping conversations, the strong smells of truffle oil and roasted meat. It was too much. All of it was too much. "Don't gawk," Gerald hissed, thrusting a tray of hors d'oeuvres into Alara's hands. "Table 7. And stay away from the Hale table. Only I handle that." She nodded and moved, but her attention stayed locked on the center of the room. 10 minutes later, everything broke. A delicate plate, something expensive. Sieve, decorated with caviar and edible gold, was placed in front of the boy. "I don't want it," Noah said. His voice cracked, sharp and panicked. "Just eat," Marcus replied, dragging a hand through his hair. The cracks were showing now. "It's just food. Do you want the tablet? Do you want to leave?" Noah's lower lip trembled. I want mommy. The word detonated across the room. Silence slammed down hard. Everyone knew the story. Marcus Hale's wife, Evelyn, had died in a car accident 4 years earlier. Noah had been in the back seat. She's not here, Marcus whispered, his voice suddenly brittle. Stop. You're causing a scene. No. Mommy. Noah screamed, sweeping his arm across the table. Crystal shattered. Water splashed. White orchids crashed to the floor. Then the screaming started. This wasn't a tantrum. It was raw panic. Noah slid from his chair, curling into himself on the cold marble floor amid broken glass, hands clamped over his ears as his body rocked violently. Honestly, a woman nearby muttered. Control your child. Marcus stood abruptly, his face drained of color. He reached down. Get up. Now. Don't touch me. Noah shrieked, kicking blindly. Gerald rushed forward, flustered and red-faced. Mr. Hale, perhaps it would be best if... I'm trying, Marcus snapped, his composure finally cracking. For one fleeting second, Alara saw it. Not arrogance. Not power. Fear. A man who could buy anything, except the calm of his own child. Security began closing in, their dark silhouettes stretching across the floor. Noah's sobs turned hoarse. Alara didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She moved. Slipping past the guards, she knelt on the floor, ignoring the shattered glass, ignoring the billionaire towering above her. She lowered her voice until only Noah could hear. 5 words. And the screaming stopped. She was hungry. Not the dramatic, movie kind of hunger, just the quiet ache that sat in her stomach and never really left. The kind you learn to ignore. Rent M. Oni didn't even cross her mind anymore. That worry had burned out weeks ago. Her plastic tray hit the edge of an empty table with a sharp clatter, loud enough to turn a few heads. Before anyone could say a word, she stepped away from it and walked straight into the center of the dining room. Stop. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The word landed solid and steady, cutting clean through the chaos. Marcus looked up, startled. I'm sorry, what? Please, she said, without looking at him. Step back. She glanced at the 2 security staff hovering nearby and gave a small shake of her head. It's okay. I've got this. Then she did the unthinkable. She lowered herself to the floor, right into the slick mess of spilled water and crushed roe. Cold seeped instantly through the thin fabric of her uniform, dark stains spreading across her knees. She didn't flinch. She didn't care. She didn't grab the child. She didn't tell him to calm down. She didn't shush him or apologize to the room. She simply sat there, a few feet away, and slowly bent forward until her eyes were level with his. It's too much, isn't it? She murmured. For half a second, the boy stopped screaming just long enough to drag in a shaky breath. His face was blotchy, eyes wide and glassy, chest hitching like it forgot how to work. The lights, she continued softly, as if the 50 people staring at her didn't exist. They buzz like angry insects. And the clinking silverware sounds like metal crashing together. It hurts your ears. The boy sniffed. His shoulders shook. Then, barely, he nodded. She held out her hand, palm up, keeping it perfectly still. She didn't move closer. My name's Mara, she whispered. I know a trick that makes the noise disappear. Want to try it? Marcus stood frozen, mouth slightly open. Across the room, the maitre d', Gerald, was slicing a finger across his throat in silent fury, ordering her to stop. She didn't even look at him. The boy nodded again. Okay, she said. Watch me. She began to hum. Not a tune. Not a lullaby. Just a low, steady vibration that came from deep in her chest. It was grounding, rhythmic, almost like the sound of an engine idling. At the same time, she tapped her fingers against the tile. 1, 2, 1, 2. Copy me, she whispered. The boy hesitated. Then his tiny finger touched the floor. 1, 2. The room went still. He doesn't need someone to control him, Mara said, lifting her gaze to Marcus. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried, weighted with certainty. He needs someone to make him feel safe. Not a handler. Not a rule enforcer. A parent. She turned back to the boy. You're okay, she said gently. The buzzing's gone. He crawled toward her. Not toward his father. Toward the server in the stained apron. He pressed his face into her shoulder and sobbed, but this time, it was quiet. Loose. The sound of something finally letting go. Mara wrapped her arms around him and rocked slowly, ignoring the ruined uniform, ignoring the tight expressions and judgmental stares. For a brief, fragile moment, the restaurant exhaled. Then the moment shattered. What do you think you're doing? Gerald hissed, yanking her arm and hauling her to her feet. The boy cried out as she was pulled away. Get your hands off her, Marcus snapped, his voice dropping low and dangerous. Gerald froze. Sir, Marcus said coldly, she's the only person who's been able to calm him down in half a year. He looked at her, really looked this time. The frayed edges of her collar. The exhaustion carved into her face. The way his son was reaching for her hand. I'm sorry about the mess, Mara said quietly, pulling free. I'll clean it. Don't, Marcus replied. He reached into his coat, pulled out a matte black card, and tossed it onto the table. Add 4,000 for the damage, he said. And another 4 for her tip. The room gasped. We're leaving. He lifted his now calm son, who twisted around and stretched one small hand toward H. Bye, the boy whispered. Bye, Mara said, her chest aching for reasons she couldn't explain. At the door, Marcus paused and looked back. Thank you. Then they were gone. Mara stood there, knees soaked, heart hammering. Gerald approached, shaking, not with gratitude, but rage. Pack your things, he whispered. But, the tip. You humiliated this place, he snarled. You sat on the floor like an animal. You're done. Get out. The rain in Port Alder was icy that night, and being broke made it cut deeper. Mara exited through the alley behind the restaurant, a cardboard box tucked under her arm. Inside were her spare shoes and half a protein bar. No umbrella. No tip. The money, she was told, went to cover emotional disruption. She knew better. She just didn't have the strength, or cash, to fight it. She rode the bus south, into a neighborhood where streetlights flickered and sirens blended into the night. Her apartment was a single room with a hot plate and a sink pretending to be a kitchen. Inside the door was a notice. Final warning. Balance due, $980. 48 hours to vacate. She slid down the door and sat on the floor. No tears came. Crying took energy she didn't have. Her gaze drifted to the nightstand. One photo. A faded ultrasound dated 3 years back. I'm trying, she whispered. The next day disappeared into rejection. Cafes. Diners. A laundromat. No one was hiring. Desperation showed, and people avoided it like a smell they couldn't air out. By late afternoon, she sat on a park bench counting coins. Enough for a sandwich or a bus ride to a shelter. Not both. She was just about to stand up. The moment the engine idled beside the curb, she felt it. This wasn't just any car pulling up. It was a matte charcoal SUV, oversized and silent, with windows so dark they reflected the street like a mirror. The kind of vehicle you only ever saw in documentaries about powerful people, the kind that didn't stop unless it meant to. The rear door opened. A man stepped out, all in broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored suit that sat too perfectly on his frame. He was older, his head shaved smooth, a thin scar slicing through one eyebrow like an old warning. Everything about him screamed discipline. Military, maybe. Or something close to it. This was not Rowan. Lena Clark tightened her grip on her purse. "Who's asking?" she said, her voice guarded. The man steadied her for a beat. "Mr. Hargreave would like a word." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "I didn't take anything," Lena blurted out. "If this is about the apron, I left it in the staff room." "I swear." "Miss Clark," he said evenly, gesturing toward the open door. "Please. Get in the car." No, she shook her head, already stepping back. The man exhaled, slow and tired, then lifted his phone. On the screen was a live video feed. A massive living room filled the display, sunlight pouring through tall windows, toys scattered across polished floors like the aftermath of a storm. In the center of it all, a man paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair, panic written into every movement. Beneath the table, a small boy screamed. Not a tantrum. Not defiance. Pure distress. "He hasn't stopped since morning," the man said quietly. "He keeps asking for the magic woman. Mr. Hargreave doesn't know what else to do." Lena stared at the screen. The child's body language hit her like a punch to the chest, tight shoulders, curled posture, fear vibrating through him. She recognized it instantly. It was the same hollow ache she woke up with every morning, the kind loneliness carved into you over time. "I'm not a nanny," she said, though the words felt thin. "Fragile." "For 1 hour," the man replied. "Mr. Hargreave is prepared to offer $12,000. Her mouth went dry. 12,000. That wasn't just money. That was survival. That was rent. That was breathing room. That was the chance to start over. 1 hour. She looked down at the bus ticket clenched in her hand. Then BAC. K at the sleek, waiting SUV. "Okay," she whispered. The drive took 40 minutes. They left the city behind, climbing winding roads into the hills, where streetlights disappeared and houses were known by names instead of addresses. Iron gates rose ahead of them, opening silently to reveal Stonehaven Estate, a fortress of glass and stone perched above the ocean, vast and imposing. The front door opened before Lena could reach it. Marcus Hargreave stood there, barefoot in joggers and a wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles etched under his eyes. He looked nothing like the composed executive she remembered. "You came," he breathed, like someone released from underwater. "I heard today was rough," Lena said softly as she stepped inside. The foyer swallowed her whole. Vaulted ceilings. Marble floors. Space that echoed. "Rough?" Marcus let out a hollow laugh. He threw a lamp at the nanny. "She quit on the spot. 3rd one this month." He rubbed his face. "He's in the library. I can't get him to come out." Lena didn't wait. She followed the sound of muffled sobbing. The library was stunning, wall-to-wall shelves, towering windows, but it looked like a battlefield. Books lay everywhere. A lamp was tipped on its side. Under a massive oak desk, wrapped in a blanket, was the boy. She didn't announce herself. She simply crossed the room and sat on the rug, folding her legs beneath her. From her pocket, she pulled out a small paper crane, crinkled, imperfect. She'd folded it from a napkin during the ride. She nudged it gently so it slid under the desk. Silence. Then a tiny hand reached out and grabbed it. "It flies," Lena whispered. "But only when it's quiet. Loud noises scare it." A small face peeked out, red eyes, tear-streaked cheeks. "Magic lady," the boy croaked. "It's Lena," she smiled. "But that works too." He crawled out without screaming. Climbed into her lap like he had before. Rested his head against her chest. From the doorway, Marcus froze. "How do you do that?" he asked, Beryl. "Why audible?" "I listen," she replied, stroking the boy's hair. "Adults hear words. Kids need you to hear the feeling." Marcus stepped closer, really looking at her now, the worn sneakers, the threadbare jacket. "You lost your job," he said quietly. "Because of yesterday." "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." He leaned against the desk. "I looked into you. No diploma. No family listed. 5 service jobs in 2 years. Eviction filed this week." Lena stiffened. She gently moved the boy aside and stood. "If you're done auditing my life, I'd like my payment. I don't want you to leave. I'm not a handout." "You're not," Marcus said firmly. "You're essential." He straightened, the businessman returning. "I can't run my company because I'm afraid to leave my son." "You're the only person he responds to." He stepped closer. "I'm offering you a job. Live-in caretaker. $120,000 a year. Full benefits. Private guest house." The room spun. "There's one condition," he added. "What is it?" His expression darkened. "You take care of my son. But you stay out of the East Wing. The 3rd floor is forbidden. If you go up there even once, you're gone." Lena met his eyes. She saw desperation. And something else. A secret. She stared into his steel gray eyes, her instincts screaming at her to run. Run now. Take the $10,000. Don't look back. But then she felt it, a gentle tug on the denim at her thigh. She looked down. The boy was standing there, small fingers clenched around a carefully folded paper crane. He held it up like an offering, his wide eyes hopeful. "Fly?" he asked softly. Her chest tightened. She looked back at the man watching them, unreadable, guarded, wounded. "Deal," she said. And just like that, her life changed. Life at Blackridge Estate settled into a rhythm that felt almost unreal, the kind of calm that only existed in movies or fairy tales. For 3 weeks, Mara Collins lived a life she had never imagined was meant for someone else. Like her. She was given her own cottage on the grounds, a storybook stone building wrapped in ivy, with a real fireplace that crackled warmly at night and a solid bed that didn't creak with every movement. It felt safe. Permanent. But the real miracle wasn't the cottage. It was Noah. The screaming stopped. The violent tantrums faded into memory. Under Mara's care, the once terrified little boy slowly began to bloom. They spent long afternoons in the sprawling gardens, hunting for beetles beneath rose bushes or floating folded paper boats across the stone fountain. She taught him how to tie his shoes, patiently looping and unlooping the laces until he finally got it. She taught him how to make grilled cheese sandwiches, much to the visible horror of the estate's immaculate French chef, Lucien, who watched in silent despair as cheese met bread without ceremony. Even Julian Hartwell changed. Not completely. He was still distant. Still buried in work. He left before sunrise most mornings and often returned long after dark. But Mara noticed the difference. She would catch him watching. Sometimes he stood on the balcony outside his study, looking down into the garden where she and Noah were playing tag. His face wasn't cold then, it was hollow. Full of something that looked like longing and grief. The peace at Blackridge Estate was fragile. And it shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Mara was in the kitchen, helping Noah fit together the final pieces of a puzzle, when the front doors slammed open with a thunderous bang. The sharp click-clack of high heels echoed across the marble floors like gunfire. "Julian! Where are you?" The voice was sharp, polished, and furious. A woman swept into the room like she owned the place, tall, flawless, terrifyingly composed. Platinum blonde hair framed her sculpted face, and her white tailored pantsuit looked like it cost more than Mara had earned in years. Her eyes moved constantly, calculating the worth of everything they landed on. This was Celeste Whitmore. A senator's daughter. A socialite. And according to every gossip magazine in existence, the future Mrs. Hartwell. Celeste stopped cold when she saw Mara. Her gaze slid slowly over Mara's worn jeans and plain t-shirt, then snapped to Noah, who instantly retreated behind Mara's leg, gripping her tightly. "Well," Celeste said coolly, "you must be the new hire." "I'm Mara. I'm the nanny." "Nanny?" Celeste scoffed, strolling closer. She glanced down at the puzzle pieces scattered across the table. "Julian's gone through 4 nannies in 6 months. Don't get comfortable, sweetheart. You're just a bandage on a bullet wound." She turned sharply toward the boy. "Noah, why don't you go find your blue truck?" Mara placed a gentle hand on Noah's back. "Go ahead," she whispered. He ran off. Mara straightened and faced her. "Can I help you with something, Miss Whitmore?" "You can help me by staying out of my way," Celeste hissed, stepping closer. "I know your type. You think because you got the sad widower to open his wallet, you have a shot at his world." Her smile was sharp and cruel. "Let me tell you something about Julian. He's broken. And he belongs to people who understand his world, not to a diner girl who smells like grease and desperation." Mara felt the heat rise in her chest, but she swallowed it down. "I'm just here to do my job." "We'll see," Celeste said, flashing a shark's grin. "Julian is hosting a charity gala here Saturday. The Ocean Revival Fund. I organized it. I expect you and the boy to be invisible. And if Noah causes a scene—" Her eyes narrowed. "That's on you." The rest of the week was hell. Caterers, florists, decorators, and planners flooded the estate, barking orders nonstop. Celeste ruled them all like a general, and she made sure Mara stayed at the very bottom. She criticized Noah's clothes, his hair, his manners. By the night of the gala, the house was unrecognizable. Hundreds of guests packed the ballroom. Crystal shone. Delier sparkled overhead. Champagne flowed endlessly. Laughter echoed off marble walls. Mara stayed upstairs in the nursery, reading softly to Noah, keeping him hidden from the chaos. "I want water," he murmured sleepily. "I'll get it," she whispered. "Stay in bed." She slipped into the hallway and headed toward the small upstairs kitchenette. As she passed the balcony overlooking the ballroom, she paused. Julian stood below, devastating in a black tuxedo, surrounded by investors. He smiled politely, but his eyes looked distant. Celeste clung to his arm, laughing far too loudly. Mara felt a pang she had no right to feel. She filled the glass and turned back, only to stop short. "Hold on." Celeste stood at the top of the stairs. She looked flushed. Slightly drunk. Dangerous. Enjoying the view, she asked sweetly, "I'm just getting water for Noah." "You know," Celeste slurred, leaning against the railing, "Julian talks about you. Mara is incredible with him. Mara is a miracle. It's nauseating." "He loves his son," Mara said quietly. "He loves the ghost," Celeste snapped. "He looks at you and sees her. Eleanor. Don't you get it? You're just a replacement." Mara froze. Before she could respond, Celeste stumbled forward, grabbing Mara's arm for balance, and suddenly slipped something into the front pocket of Mara's utility apron. "Oops," she giggled. "Clumsy me." She walked away, calling over her shoulder, "You might want to check your pocket. Wouldn't want to be accused of anything." Mara frowned and reached inside. Her fingers brushed cold metal. She pulled it out. A diamond bracelet, heavy, ornate, unmistakably expensive. "Thief!" Celeste screamed. The music below cut off instantly. Her voice carried through the entire ballroom. "She stole it." Security. And every eye turned upward. Vanessa's perfectly manicured finger shot out, pointing straight at Mara. Within seconds, Caleb was already charging up the staircase, his long strides urgent, to private security. Officers close behind him. Conversations died mid-sentence. Crystal glasses froze in midair. Guests leaned over the railings, whispering in confusion. "What's happening?" Caleb demanded, his voice sharp, eyes burning as they locked onto the scene. I caught her. Vanessa cried, her voice cracking in a way that sounded practiced. She clutched her chest as if she might faint. I went upstairs to use the restroom, and I saw her coming out of your bedroom, Caleb. And she had my bracelet. The diamond one. The anniversary gift you gave me. Every head turned. Mara stood frozen at the top of the stairs, the bracelet clenched in her trembling hand. Her face had gone white, like all the blood had drained from it. Mara? Caleb asked quietly. The word carried weight. A warning. A question. I didn't steal it, she said, her voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. She slipped it into my coat pocket just now. I swear. Vanessa laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Oh, please. Why would I do that? She gestured broadly at Mara, as if presenting evidence. She's a server with overdue rent notices. I'm a sterling. Be honest, who actually has a reason to steal? It was a flawless trap. Money versus nothing. Status versus survival. The room already knew which side it expected to win. Caleb didn't speak right away. He took the bracelet from Mara's hand, his fingers brushing hers for half a second. He turned it over slowly, steadying the clasp. Then he looked at Vanessa. Then back at Mara. The silence stretched. Long, suffocating. Finally, Caleb spoke. You're lying, Vanessa. The hallway went dead quiet. Vanessa's smile collapsed. What did you just say? This clasp, Caleb said calmly, lifting the bracelet. It's not simple. There's a hidden safety latch. You need 2 hands to open it. He looked directly at her. There's no way Mara could have removed this from your wrist without you noticing. Vanessa's face flushed. I must have taken it off earlier. No, Caleb said, his voice turning cold. If you weren't wearing it, it would have been locked in the guest safe. And that safe opens with a fingerprint. He paused. Mine. Her mouth opened. Closed. You planted it, he continued evenly. You wanted to embarrass her. Make an example of her. Vanessa snapped. She's nobody, Caleb, she screamed. Why are you defending her? She's just a help. Caleb didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. She's the only honest person in this house, he said. Get out. Vanessa laughed in disbelief. You can't be serious. I am, Caleb replied. Get out of my house. We're done. Reality finally hit her. She looked around, searching for support, and found none. With a sound halfway between a sob and a scream, she spun around and stormed down the stairs, shoving past the stunned security guards. The doors slammed. Caleb exhaled slowly, the tension draining from his shoulders. He turned to Mara. Are you okay? She nodded, though her hands were still shaking. Thank you for believing me. He stepped closer, lifted his hand, then stopped just short of touching her face. I know you, he said quietly. I've seen how you care for him. You don't want possessions. You just want peace. Mara swallowed. Then why did she say that? She whispered. She said you look at me and see someone else. Someone named Elena. Something in Caleb shut down instantly. Warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by a wall of ice. She was drunk, he said too quickly. Go check on Noah. And just like that, he turned and walked away. Mara stood alone in the hallway, gripping her glass of water, unanswered questions echoing louder than the storm clouds gathering outside. 2 weeks later, the worst storm in decades slammed into the coastline. The sky turned a bruised violet. Wind screamed around Ravencrest Estate, rattling the windows like bones. Power flickered all afternoon. Caleb was supposed to be in Chicago for a board meeting, but every flight was grounded. Still, he wasn't home. Flooding had trapped him at his downtown office. I can't make it back tonight, his voice crackled over the phone. The bridge is underwater. Are you holding up? We're okay, Mara said, clutching the phone as thunder shook the walls. We've got flashlights. Harold's checking the generator. Listen carefully, Caleb said urgently. If the power cuts out, the security system resets. Lock the doors manually. And keep Noah in his room, storms scare him. I will. And Mara, he added. Stay out of the east wing. The roof leaks during storms. It's dangerous. I understand. The line went dead. By 9:20 p.m., the house fell into darkness. The generator kicked in, casting dim emergency lights through the corridors. Shadows stretched and twisted along the walls like reaching hands. Mara was in the kitchen heating milk when she heard it. A door slamming. Noah, she called. No answer. Her heart jumped. She rushed into the living room. Empty. Up the stairs. His bedroom door was open. His bed untouched. The window rattled violently. Panic closed around her chest. Then, a giggle. Soft. Echoing. From the far end of the hallway. Toward the east wing. No, she breathed, already running. The air grew colder as she approached the massive oak doors. They were slightly open. See. Aleb's warning echoed in her mind. But Noah was in there. She pushed the doors wide. Noah, come out. This isn't funny. The east wing wasn't damaged. It was immaculate. Plush carpet muffled her steps. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old books. The storm vanished, sealed away like it never existed. Her flashlight beam swept past immaculate guest rooms, untouched, preserved. At the end of the hall stood a single black door. A soft thump sounded from inside. Mara didn't hesitate. She grabbed the handle. Unlocked. She stepped inside and froze. This wasn't a bedroom. It was a gallery. The studio was hidden at the far end of the house, sealed off from the rest of the manor like a forgotten organ. Large canvases were stacked haphazardly against the walls, their edges warped with age. The faint, sour-sweet scent of linseed oil and turpentine lingered in the air, subtle but unmistakable, as if the room itself had been holding its breath for years. In the middle of the floor sat a small boy. Miles. He was cross-legged on the cold hardwood, clutching a thick, leather-bound book almost too large for his hands. The flashlight beam trembled as it spilled across the cracked spine. Mommy's book, Miles whispered, his voice soft, reverent. No, Miles, we have to leave, Clara said urgently as she rushed toward him, her heart pounding louder than the thunder outside. Your father will be furious if he finds us here. Miles barely looked up. Instead, he raised a finger and pointed toward the far side of the room. Look, he said. Mommy. Clara froze. The easel stood beneath a tall window, shrouded in a pale dust cloth that fluttered faintly in the draft. A chill crept up her spine, one that had nothing to do with the storm clawing at the manor walls. Slowly, she reached out and pulled the cloth away. The flashlight slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The painting beneath was breathtaking. The colors were rich, alive, impossibly detailed. A woman sat in a sunel. At garden, dressed in a white summer dress, her posture relaxed, her hands folded gently in her lap. She was smiling, a soft, knowing smile that seemed to follow Clara no matter where she stood. It wasn't a resemblance. It was her. The same eyes. The same curve of the nose. Even the slight unevenness of her front tooth, something she'd always been self-conscious about. And there, just above the collarbone, was the tiny star-shaped birthmark she had concealed with makeup every single day since she was 16. Clara pressed trembling fingers to her own skin, her breath catching painfully in her throat. How was this possible? Her gaze darted wildly around the studio. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling with sketches. Dozens of them. Charcoal. Ink. Pencil. All of her. Laughing. Sleeping. Crying. Standing in profile. Staring straight ahead. Her knees nearly buckled. She turned back to the boy and snatched the book from his hands. It wasn't just a notebook, it was a diary. Embossed on the front were initials. I.H.W. Clara's hand shook violently as she flipped to the final entry. The date at the top made her stomach twist. 3 years ago. September 3rd. The night of the crash. I finally found her. After all these years, the investigator tracked her down. Her name is Clara Hayes. She lives in Milwaukee. She doesn't know I exist. She doesn't know we were separated. Daniel says I should leave it alone. That dragging her back into our lives will only reopen old wounds. But I have to know her. I have to tell her the truth about our parents. I'm driving to the city tonight. I'm taking Miles. I want him to meet his aunt. I'm bringing her home. The diary slid from Clara's fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. Twins. They were twins. Her sister, Isabel, hadn't died in some random, meaningless accident. She had been driving to find Clara. You look like Mommy, Miles said quietly, tugging at Clara's rigid hand. But you're nicer. Her thoughts spiraled violin. TLY. The instant connection she'd felt with the boy. The way Daniel had stared at her the first night they met, like he'd seen a ghost and a miracle all at once. He had known. He'd known the moment she walked into that restaurant. Suddenly, the light snapped on. Blinding white. The generator roared to life, flooding the studio with harsh clarity. I told you, a deep voice thundered from the doorway. Never to come in here. Clara spun around. Daniel stood soaked to the bone, rainwater dripping from his coat and pooling on the pristine carpet. He'd driven through the flood to get back. He wasn't looking at his son. He was staring directly at her. And in his hand was a key. Daniel, Clara whispered, backing into the easel, her shoulder brushing the painted image of her dead sister. You knew. I tried to stop you, he said calmly as he stepped inside. His voice was steady, too steady. I tried to pay you off. I tried to fire you. But you kept coming back. She was my sister, Clara choked. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel stopped inches from her. His eyes flicked to the painting, then back to her face. Because if you know who you really are, he said quietly, then you'll know what actually happened that night. And I can't allow that. What? Clara whispered. It was an accident. The police. The report was wrong, Daniel cut in. He bent down, picked up the diary, and snapped it shut. Isabel wasn't driving to find you. She was running from me. The storm outside raged louder, but the silence inside the studio was suffocating. You drove her away? Clara asked, her voice shaking. Daniel collapsed into a leather chair, suddenly looking older, worn down. Not intentionally. Someone was feeding her lies. For months, she received messages, emails, letters, photos. Fake proof that I was cheating. That I planned to have her committed. That I wanted to take Miles away from her. His voice cracked. She didn't tell me until the night she left. She screamed that she was T. Aching Miles to her sister, to you, where I'd never find them. He swallowed hard. I chased her. It was raining, just like tonight. She took the sharp turn off Crestline Road too fast. The brakes didn't respond. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. The brakes? I hired an investigator, Daniel said bitterly. Marcus Hale. He found cut marks on the brake line. But the evidence vanished from the impound lot before we could present it. He looked up at her. Someone wanted her dead. Or maybe they wanted me dead, and she took the car I usually drove. Clara stared at Isabel's portrait. And you think whoever did this is still here? I know they are, Daniel said. That's why I hired you. Not just for miles. Her heart dropped. Your bait. I'm sorry, he said softly. I needed them to panic. I knew if Isabel's ghost walked back into Hawthorne Manor, they'd try to finish the job. And when they do, he added quietly, I'll be ready. Clara took another step back, horror settling deep in her chest. Oriana's voice broke into a whisper. So that was it, she said, tears burning the corners of her eyes. You let me move into this house. You let me grow close to your son. All of it, just to trap a murderer. Caleb finally snapped. I didn't plan to care about you, he shouted, his controlled facade shattering. I didn't plan for you to be the only person who could make my kid laugh again. And I sure as hell didn't plan to fall in love with you. The words hit the air and stayed there, heavy and undeniable. Caleb froze, as if stunned by his own confession. Before Oriana could say a single word, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then everything went black. The hum of electricity died, plunging the estate into silence. That shouldn't happen, Caleb muttered, his voice dropping into something sharp and tactical. The generator has a secondary fuel cell. It's designed not to fail. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a handgun. Oriana sucked in a breath. You have a gun? Stay here, Caleb ordered, already moving. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Caleb, where are you going? To find my uncle, he said grimly. He runs estate maintenance. He's the only one with the override code. Then he was gone, disappearing into the dark hallway. The lock clicked behind him. Oriana stood alone, lightning flashing through the tall windows. Each burst illuminated the oil portrait of her late sister, watching from the wall like a silent accusation. Minutes dragged by. 5. Then 10. And then she heard it. A sound that turned her blood to ice. A scream. Not from the hallway, from the baby monitor still tucked into her pocket. Mama! Mama, help! Her heart slammed against her ribs. Oriana didn't hesitate. She grabbed the heavy brass figurine from the desk and kicked the door open. The plan didn't matter anymore. The killer didn't matter. Nothing mattered except that scream. She ran. The nursery door was wide open. Empty. The curtains whipped violently in the wind, rain spraying across the room. The window leading to the fire escape had been smashed. Oriana rushed forward and looked out. Lightning split the sky. In its brief white flash, she saw a figure in a long black raincoat sprinting across the lawn toward the cliffs that overlooked the ocean, carrying a struggling child. Noah, she screamed. She didn't wait for Caleb. She climbed through the broken window, landing hard on the slick metal fire escape. Her foot slipped, her shin smashing painfully against the railing, but she kept moving. Down. Down again. She hit the muddy ground and ran. The storm fought her with everything it had. Wind shoved against her chest, rain blinded her eyes, but she lowered her head and sprinted. The figure was heading straight for the old boathouse perched at the cliff's edge. Oriana burst through the doors, soaked, gasping for air. Inside, the figure turned. He held Noah with one arm, the child dangling dangerously close to the op, and dropped where boats were lowered into the roaring ocean far below. The man pulled back his hood. It wasn't the uncle. It was Marcus, the floor manager from the Black Glass restaurant. Oriana froze, disbelief crashing over her. Marcus, why? He smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was fear stretched thin, cracking into madness. I lost everything because of you, he said. Your boss fired me. Blacklisted me. I couldn't get hired anywhere. I owe people a lot of money. Dangerous people. Who? Oriana demanded, stepping closer. Who paid you? Does it matter? Marcus snapped. One step closer and I drop him. Noah sobbed, his small shoes kicking helplessly over the black water nearly 20 feet below. Mama, please. Oriana raised her hand slowly. Marcus, look at me, she said, her voice dropping into the same calm, steady tone she used to soothe Noah at night. You don't want to hurt a child. You're cruel sometimes. You're proud. But you're not a killer. You don't know me. Marcus screamed, and his grip slipped. I know you're scared, she said softly, inching forward. I know you're trapped. Give me the boy. We can fix this. It's too late. Marcus shrieked. His eyes suddenly widened. Oriana turned. Caleb stood in the doorway, gun raised. But behind him, a second shadow moved. The uncle stepped forward, holding a crowbar. Before anyone could react, he swung. The metal connected with a sickening crack. Caleb collapsed instantly, his gun skidding across the floor. Well done, the uncle said calmly, stepping over his nephew's unconscious body. His trench coat was immaculate despite the storm. But the plan has changed. No ransom. No witnesses. Oriana's breath caught. Uncle Victor. He sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. It's business, dear. I built this empire with Caleb's father. And Caleb wanted to throw it all away, charity, oceans, causes. His mother discovered I was falsifying accounts. She had to go. Oriana's stomach dropped. And now, Victor continued S. Smoothly, a tragic kidnapping. A dead nanny. A dead heir. And a grieving uncle inherits everything. He picked up Caleb's gun and aimed it. Throw the boy into the water, Victor ordered. Marcus shook his head. No. That wasn't the deal. Do it, Victor snapped. Or I kill you first. Marcus looked at the ocean. Then at Noah. Then at Oriana. She locked eyes with him. Marcus, she said quietly. You once gave me a shift when I was starving. You're not this man. His face crumpled. Victor fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Now. Marcus squeezed his eyes shut and threw Noah. But not down. He threw him toward Oriana. She lunged, catching Noah midair, crashing onto the wooden deck and rolling to shield him with her body. Traitor! Victor screamed. He aimed and pulled the trigger. Click! The gun jammed. Rainwater dripped from the barrel as Victor cursed and struggled with the slide. That second was enough. Oriana didn't run. She reached for the emergency wall kit beside her and ripped out the flare gun. She didn't aim. She just pointed it straight at Victor's face and fired. The moment he fired, the world turned red. A violent flash detonated inside the cramped boathouse, flooding the space with a searing crimson glare. It was so bright it felt solid, like heat crashing through the air. Marcus screamed as the weapon slipped from his hands. He clawed at his face, blinded by the phosphorus burn that scorched his vision. Disoriented and panicking, he staggered backward. His heel caught on a loose coil of rope. He lost his balance, arms flailing, and then he vanished. His body plunged through the open hatch and disappeared into the raging black water below. The splash barely registered, swallowed instantly by the howl of the storm and the relentless crash of waves against the cliff. Silence followed. Heavy. Shaking. Caleb slid down the wall and collapsed onto the floor, his chest heaving as sobs tore out of him. He didn't resist. He didn't move. He just cried in the tea. He sounded a man whose fight was finally over. Mara tightened her arms around Noah, holding him close as his small body trembled. She rocked him gently, back and forth, murmuring into his hair. It's okay, she whispered, her voice breaking but steady. The bees are gone. You're safe. You're safe now. Nearby, Daniel groaned as he pushed himself upright, one hand braced against the floor. His head throbbed, his ears rang, but his eyes went immediately to Mara, to his son, and then to the empty space where his uncle had been standing just moments before. Mara, he rasped. She met his gaze. We're here, she said softly. We're safe. The police arrived roughly 10 minutes later, their blue lights slicing through the rain like beacons. Officers flooded the scene while paramedics rushed in behind them. Detective Collins placed Caleb under arrest. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He went willingly, tears streaming down his face, not from fear, but from relief. Out on the water, Coast Guard boats swept the area with searchlights, scanning the violent currents at the base of the cliff. But everyone there knew the truth. Those waters were infamous. No one survived them. Marcus was gone. Daniel refused treatment until he personally watched the paramedics examine Mara and Noah. Only then did he allow himself to be checked. Soon after, the three of them sat in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in thick thermal blankets, rain still drumming against the metal walls. "You saved him," Daniel said quietly. He pressed an ice pack against his temple, his eyes fixed on Mara. "You saved my son." Mara shook her head gently. "I saved my family." Daniel swallowed. Then he reached out and took her hand, his grip firm but warm. "About that," he said. "We ran the DNA test earlier today, before the storm. The results came in while I was unconscious." Mara looked at him, her breath catching. 99.9%, he continued. "You're Elena's sister. That makes you Noah's aunt." He paused, squeezing her hand. "But to me, you're just Mara, the woman who saved my life. And my son's." Mara looked down at Noah, fast asleep in her lap. His small fingers were wrapped tightly around the paper crane she had folded for him weeks earlier. It was soaked and crushed now, but he refused to let it go. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Daniel smiled, a real smile, the kind that finally reached his eyes. "Now," he said, "I fire you." Her heart dropped. "What?" "I can't keep you on as a nanny," he said gently. "It wouldn't be appropriate for the woman I plan to ask out on a date." Mara laughed, a breathless, tear-soaked laugh. "A date? I don't even have anything to wear. My uniform is ruined." "I think we can solve that," Daniel replied with a grin. "Something without an apron, maybe." 6 months later, the obsidian room was gone. In its place stood a new building, warm, bright, and full of laughter. The Elena Foundation, a center dedicated to children with sensory processing disorders and autism. Behind the building, a garden bloomed. A picnic blanket stretched across the grass. Mara sat in the sunlight wearing a soft yellow sundress. No uniform. No name tag. Just her. A small, delicate ring rested on her finger, not a diamond, but a sapphire, deep blue like the ocean she had pulled Noah from. Nearby, Noah ran through the grass laughing, chasing a golden retriever puppy named Jasper. Daniel approached with a tray of lemonade and sat beside her, pressing a kiss to her cheek. "He looks happy," he said. "He is," Mara replied. "He just needed someone to listen." "I'm listening now," Daniel said quietly. "To both of you." Mara leaned her head against his shoulder. From her pocket, she pulled out the ultrasound photo she had carried for so long. She glanced at it, then at the small grave marker beneath the willow tree nearby. "Elena Caldwell. I found you," Mara whispered into the breeze. "And I found home." Noah ran back toward them, breathless and glowing. Mara. The butterfly landed on my nose." "That means you're lucky," she laughed, pulling him into her arms. "No," Noah said seriously, looking at his dad, then at her. "I'm not lucky. I'm loved." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the estate in gold, Mara knew it was the truest thing she had ever heard. The waitress who once had barely $12 to her name was now the richest woman in the world, not because of money, but because she had found what money could never buy. A family. From a crying child in a restaurant to a rescue on a storm-torn cliff, Mara proved that the people with the least often have the most to give. She lost her sister, but she found her purpose. And Daniel learned that peace isn't something you purchase. It's something you build with love. Wow, that one hit hard. What did you think? Did you suspect the uncle, or were you convinced it was the jealous fiancé? Let me know in the comments if this story touched your heart. And please, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story like this. We share powerful real-life dramas every single week. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind to the waiter. You never know who they might be. See you next time.